Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. We're going to get into a really interesting herb today. It's called Rhodiola. Rhodiola comes under many names. You've probably heard it under more popular names. It's an adaptogen. It's also a bitter herb. Really neat herb, and I think you're going to enjoy learning about Rhodiola. First of all, let me go ahead and just warn you, you may hear a lot of loud booms during this podcast because I got some serious thunderstorms coming through. It is raining like cats and dogs out there right now, and major thunderstorms, lots of lightning, and we're actually under tornado warning. So I figured better go ahead and do the podcast in case I'm without power for a couple of days, because really where I live, they just don't get in that much of a hurry to get the power turned back on. When you live in a town of 70 people where the county seat, which is, I guess, almost, 12 miles away, is 400 people, you don't get prioritized on the power company's list to come get the power back on. There have been times, especially in the winter, where I've gone 2-3 weeks without power. I don't really even consider myself a prepper. I write a lot for preppers. I talk a lot to preppers. This is just my lifestyle. I mean, I have to expect that a hurricane's going to come in the summer and fall, an ice storm, major blizzard's going to come in the winter, and I have to have stored food, a way to cook it, a way to heat the house, a way to have clean water, and I may not have power for a month. It happens. Seriously. I remember one time, like back in the 90s, when we literally did not have power for it was either 4 or 6 weeks, and the only reason I don't remember how long it was because I had the worst flu of my life during that period. So literally all I did was get up. Now, I mean, I was a teenager, My mother was so sick she couldn't even get out of bed, and we had no power, and it was January, and we're talking like a high of 10 degrees in the daytime and going down to like -10, -15, and even colder at night. And literally, I slept on the floor by the fireplace. And every time it started to get chilly, I'd get up, I'd go outside. I had a big stick, basically a big oak limb, and I would knock the ice off the wood pile, grab some wood, come back in, put it in the fireplace, and basically pass out. I was so sick. So really, I guess you could say prepping has been really a way of life since I was about 4 years old. When my dad left, he had the power and water cut off before the morning before a major snowstorm came in. Yeah, so my mother kept us alive with a wood stove and limbs that the wind blew down. Melting snow for water, because of course you have no water when the power and water's cut off, and food that she had stored. So literally it has been a way of life for me for as long as I can remember. And it's okay. I think being resilient is a good thing. So let's get into. Well, okay. Before I go any further on the herbs, I like to do the recipe up front. Last week I mentioned my fermented ketchup, and everybody wants to know how to make their own ketchup. And really, I think my fermented ketchup is not only oh, exponentially better than anything you can buy in a grocery store. It's actually better than non-fermented ketchup, okay? Now, I'm going to tell you how to make it both ways. Super easy, super good. My problem with ketchup is it's usually too sweet. I actually like tomato ketchup if it's not overly sweet. I don't use a lot of ketchup. I don't put ketchup on my hamburgers usually. But with French fries, yeah. I mean, I like a little ketchup with some fries. And like I said, I use ketchup as a base for cocktail sauce and, well, barbecue sauce. If I'm not making North Carolina barbecue sauce, there is no tomato product at all in Eastern North Carolina barbecue sauce. Anyone that tells you that North Carolina barbecue sauce is just like regular sweet ketchupy sauce with vinegar added to it, they're lying or they're stupid. They're ignorant. If they tell you there's such a thing as pulled pork, okay? No, you don't get pulled pork unless you go to a pig picking. And then you pull off a piece of pork of your choice and eat it. Pulled pork is a marketing term. Look, now I know Lexington and West, they do put some ketchup in their barbecue sauce. But throughout the entire state, we take pork and chop it with cleavers. There's no pulled pork. People keep saying North Carolina style pulled pork. I pulled up an article this morning. It was in my inbox. I don't even know where it came from. Probably a major food magazine. And it said, great recipe for North Carolina pulled pork. That is a load of malarkey. Hey, I'll quote our illustrious moronic jackass president, Joe. What's his middle name? Robinette? Who the hell names their kid Robinette? I mean, if it's a girl, anyway. That moron was never elected. I'm just going to put it that way. That moron was never elected by a majority of American voters. If you think he was, I'm sorry. Boy, if you're that dumb, look. If I wasn't as good a person as I am, and I'm not the best person, I could probably sell you some oceanfront property in Arizona. I mean, that moron is illegitimate. And anyway, where was I going with that? Yes, malarkey. There's no such thing as pulled pork in North Carolina. Now, maybe there's some new barbecue restaurants that do it, but it is not traditional. It is not traditional at all. I think it really probably started in Tennessee. But in North Carolina, no. We take pork, we put it on a chopping block. We take one or two cleavers, if you happen to be talented like I am. Put a cleaver in each hand and just go to town and mince it up as fine as you can. Some of the restaurants use a mechanical mincer, which makes the meat dry and not good at all. But at real North Carolina barbecue, you go and you say, I would like white meat or dark meat. Yeah, actually, really, seriously, it's almost like chicken, but it's not. It's pork. And the dark meat is what's more smoked and fattier, basically. The loin is going to be very white and a little drier. And I, of course, just mince it all together, chop it all together. I don't mince it. I actually like cubes about a 1/4 inch. We can get as picky as we want to be. There is no such thing, one, as uniform barbecue in North Carolina. We have different, well, at least 3 different styles. Most people either say Eastern North Carolina or Western North Carolina, putting Raleigh as like the dividing line. No, there's actually at least one more style, like up here in Avery County. If you go down to the real legit barbecue restaurant in Newland, which is the county seat, they do barbecue the old-fashioned mountain way, which is cooking it in basically wood ovens, like the old wood stoves. It's drier. Their coleslaw is horrible. Their sauce is too sweet. But it's very good pork. Very good pork. And you will find that style from, like, here and over in Watauga County. You're going to find something similar in Blowing Rock at Woodlands. I think they cook with charcoal briquettes. That is totally different than cooking with live hickory and oak coals like they do in Lexington and Goldsboro and, down east. Totally different style. So I'm going to say there are at least 3 different styles. Asheville has a couple of decent barbecue joints. One of them, actually, I cannot remember the name of it. I worked with them for a political event one time, and that was one of the few times I didn't do the cooking. The candidate wanted them to cater because, I don't know, they had a friendship or something. And the pork was quite good, and they had like 5 or 7 different sauces. They actually had a Charleston style barbecue sauce, which is mustard based, because a lot of German immigrants came into Charleston, South Carolina, and they have a specific barbecue sauce there. They had a vinegar sauce. They had a vinegar sauce with tomato. I mean, look, if you just go down to Hemingway, South Carolina, which isn't 30 minutes across the line, you'll find a Scott's barbecue there. We got Scott's in North Carolina, which it actually makes the best, most authentic North Carolina barbecue sauce there is. I think they're in Goldsboro. Really, really, really cool story about that. It's a black-owned business, been in the family for generations. The original Mr. Scott was a Pentecostal holiness preacher, and in a dream, an angel gave him the recipe for his barbecue sauce. How cool is that? Okay, it really is still some of the best, really good. Even though, I don't know, well, the sauce especially. I'm just going to say it's the best sauce you can get. I won't say it's actually the best pork you can get, even though it is pretty darn good. Now, if you go down to Scott's in Hemingway, South Carolina, which is the middle of nowhere, a really nice town, friendly folks. I mean, the last time I was there, this is so cool. I can't remember if it was Hemingway or Johnsonville, which is like 5 miles away. These are very rural areas in like the old cotton country between Florence and Myrtle Beach. Okay, this is an economically depressed, very rural area, and I'm walking into a store and there's some teenagers coming down the sidewalk. Well, in North Carolina, you kind of get used to maybe teenagers being a little surly. You know what I mean? Well, I'm walking out of a store and I'm walking down the sidewalk. They stepped off the sidewalk, let me by, and said hello and wished me a good day. Boom. That is why South Carolina is often a much nicer place than most places in North Carolina. You will find the same in rural Georgia. You will find the same in rural Tennessee and rural Virginia. I am telling you, I mean, I love my home state, but man, we got some trashy people in this state. Nasty, trashy people in bad schools, and they are raising monsters for children. Anyway, if you go down to Hemingway, it's a little out of town. It's actually probably in an unincorporated community just a couple miles out of Hemingway. It's Scott's. Scott's is kind of famous because presidential candidates have to go through there because of the big presidential primary in South Carolina. That's the old Democrat stronghold area, actually, and the Democrat and the Klan are the same thing. I mean, even though now most Democrats are black in South Carolina, that area was so controlled by the Klan that they still, like Gallivant's Ferry, is a spot where Democrats have to go. They have to give their stump speeches. So they made Scott's barbecue kind of famous. I'm telling you, it is the best barbecue in the Carolinas when it comes to cooked pork. In either state, that is the best barbecue. And the reason it is the best, really, is because they do it the right way. I've talked so much about cooking and doing things what I consider to be the right way. The fella that actually, it's a family-owned business there at Scott's, he sits up all night cooking a whole hog over hardwood coals. All night. The next day, I think their aunts, maybe his wife, his mother, I have no idea. They're just old women that run the actual storefront. They chop it up and sell sandwiches, or they sell, barbecue plates. and all you do, you literally just go in and you get some meat. You get their sauce, which is essentially, a vinegar-based sauce with a little sugar in it. And it actually is a little sweeter than I prefer. The slaw's good. They give you a slice of white bread. That's it. I mean, it is so not fancy. It's the same way they've been doing it for generations in this old little storefront in the middle of nowhere. I believe the community may actually be Stuckey, South Carolina. It is worth the drive. If you are anywhere in this general vicinity, if you are unfortunate enough to go to Myrtle Beach for a vacation, I hate Myrtle Beach. If you find yourself in Charlotte, I mean, I'm telling you, there are actually some pretty good places to eat in Charlotte. There's some old drive-ins and there's some pretty decent food, actually, if you know what you're looking for. But if you want really good barbecue, yeah, I would head down, go on down through Rock Hill, head over to Florence, keep heading toward Conway on, what is it, Highway 9, and when you hit Hemingway, look for Scott's. It's worth it. I mean, if you like food the way I do. Fries are awful. Don't get the fries. I don't even know if they still have fries, but when they did, they were not good. They were those frozen, like Ore-Ida fries. But anyway, I think that's the case. I literally have not ordered anything but a barbecue sandwich there in the last 10 years. And yeah, that's good stuff. So I was going to tell you about ketchup. Well, interestingly, I love old cookbooks, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute here, but ketchup is really an interesting condiment. Now we just think of like Heinz and Hunt's, and it's just the sweet stuff you put on your fries. Well, in the early America, in the old cookbooks, in England, before the colonies, they had various types of ketchup. Essentially, when England, I think, colonized somewhere in Indonesia, I think they had some colonial association there. They found a fermented fish sauce called catsup. Catsup, okay, and that's sort of like it's like soy sauce. It's like fish sauce at a Taiwanese food. It's like Worcestershire sauce essentially. In fact, Worcestershire sauce or Worcestershire sauce, however you want to pronounce it, is one of those recipes trying to imitate that original Indonesian fish sauce. Worcestershire sauce has anchovies in it. That's a neat story, but it's a story for another day. How that originated. Essentially, someone decided to take one product from all of England's colonies when the sun never set on England, and put it in a barrel and ferment it. And it turned into this wonderful sauce that is high in anchovies, tamarinds, various things. And it really is closer to the original catsup than probably our ketchups, right? Well, in the old cookbooks, you see a mushroom ketchup, which was a fermented mushroom sauce, which is absolutely delicious. We'll have to talk about that another day. That is like the best thing to put on game. I mean, it is so good. Okay. You see walnut ketchups. They would actually make a ketchup out of green, unripe walnuts. Really interesting. And these are very good sauces, by the way. In America, and especially in England, tomatoes were not eaten. I mean, Thomas Jefferson convinced most of America that they were safe to eat and they were delicious. Before then, everybody thought they were poisonous because they are so closely related to several poisonous members of the Solanaceae family that grow in England. I mean, you eat belladonna or henbane or something, you're going to die. The tomato-like fruit is very similar. If you happen to live in the South, walk outside in the summer and look for some horse nettle. That looks like a little green tomato hanging there, and it'll turn into a little yellow tomato. And if you eat it, you will die. Well, that's so close a cousin to our cultivated tomato You wouldn't believe it. I mean, they are like just like one gene or two genes off. I mean, seriously. So tomatoes were not widely eaten. When they were, Thomas Jefferson convinced people to eat them raw and cook them into sauces and all that. Well, somewhere around 1800 or so, people started trying to make a sauce out of ketchup. I mean, a sauce out of tomatoes that was going to be another kind of ketchup. Ketchups at that point being mostly made from mushrooms and walnuts and such as that. You know, especially in the cities, sanitation was bad. Meats were usually spoiled. They needed a sauce to cover up the taste of meat that was a little rotten before it was cooked. And this is one they came up with, is tomato ketchup. Really, I love the show, the Food That Built America. They have the whole story of Heinz and how the guy came up with it. And it was literally to cover up the taste of spoiled meat. Well, the way you make ketchup, to start with, we're talking tomato ketchup, cook down a bunch of tomatoes. Okay, well, obviously, right? You peel them, seed them, chop them up, cook them down, crush them, push them through a sieve, whatever. Usually I find that it's still not quite thick enough, so I will add some tomato paste, store-bought tomato paste. You can make this entire recipe out of store-bought canned crushed tomatoes mixed with tomato paste. The consistency is up to you. If you want a thin ketchup or if you want a thicker ketchup, this is just what I do, okay? So, tomatoes, that's your start. When I'm cooking the tomatoes, I'm not adding sugar or adding salt or anything. I'm just cooking them down, and then I mix in the tomato paste. Now, ketchup is sweet. So, if you ever look at the amount of sugar in a bottle of store-bought ketchup, you may be surprised to see there's almost more sugar in it than there is tomato. I cut way back on the sugar. I used raw sugar, cane sugar, and not that much, let's say I was making a pint of ketchup. I'm probably only going to use about 3 tablespoons full. You might go about as high as a fourth a cup. I don't think it needs that much. I like to use more molasses and sugar. Molasses to me has a more balanced flavor. It's not as sweet. It has a subtle bitterness to it. And because this is fermented, the molasses actually support the lactobacillus. They make for a better ferment. Use equal amount salt to sugar. You have to have enough salt in there to keep the bad bacteria out. You want to support the lactobacillus that's going to ferment. Now, big caveat. I use soured kombucha, what we call kombucha vinegar. When kombucha has totally run its course, it makes a vinegar-like substance. It's very, 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 very sour, but it's very, very alive with all that good fermenting bacteria. So I will add to that about a fourth to a half cup of kombucha. If I didn't use kombucha, I would use like maybe Bragg's or another natural brand of apple cider vinegar that is alive, that hasn't been pasteurized, that has what they call the mother, the vinegar culture in it. You want that sourness to counter the sugar. After that, you're looking at how you want to spice it. You want your ketchup, or at least I do, to be slightly sweet and slightly sour and peppery. Well, and I also like it all very, very savory. So I chop up minced, crushed, tons of garlic. I put in a lot of garlic. Finely chopped onion. I'll put in also garlic and onion powder because it kind of has a different flavor and it gives it a little more depth. For the sweeter spices, I like to use cloves and anise. Some people use cinnamon, some people use, various things, allspice. Allspice is very good. I'll put a pinch of allspice in there. I use star anise. I'm not talking the herb anise. I'm talking, the Chinese star anise. You find it on the ethnic foods aisle. It's very inexpensive. Crush that up real well. Actually, I also add a lot of black pepper. So I'll take a pepper grinder and put in, a spoonful of peppercorns, my star anise just kind of broken into pieces, and my whole cloves, and just grind it all together. Now after that, That's what that pepper grinder's for. It's always going to have the taste of cloves and anise. You'll never just get straight pepper out of it again. I put in either cayenne pepper or a bunch of crushed red pepper. I like the smoky flavor of like smoked paprika, or just use chili powder, which is essentially the same thing, and cumin. Cumin is very, very good in there. So again, you can just use chili powder. And you get this mix of like savory and sweet and hot and peppery. Mix it all together and loosely cover it. I usually just loosely cover the jar with, I'll either use a fermentation lock or a rubber glove. You want the gas to be able to come out as it ferments without letting air in. Leave it on the counter and let it go. Let it go a couple of weeks. You'll see it bubble. You'll see that things slowly inflate. And taste it. If it tastes sour enough to you, that's, the lactobacillus is going to add an acidity to it. If it tastes good, pop it in the fridge. That just slows the fermentation. It's still alive, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. If you want to put ginger in there, go for it. If you want to make a little darker flavor, I've done this before. It's very good. Add some Worcestershire sauce. In fact, I usually do add a few dashes of Worcestershire sauce, whatever. If you want to get a little more interesting, a little more traditional, add some fish sauce. Like I said, the like Taiwanese fish sauces are very similar to that original recipe. Very good in there. Add some soy sauce. I think dark mushroom soy sauce is fantastic, and really I'll definitely add a dash of dark mushroom soy sauce. You can make it as sweet to your taste as you like. I don't like it very sweet. Remember that lactobacillus is going to eat the sugars and turn into acid, so you may want to cut back a little bit on the vinegar or whatever if you're using vinegar. You can make it as savory as you want. You can make it as spicy as you want. I have put habanero peppers in it before, which is delicious. I mean, on like a hot dog or something, forget about it. It's just, sweet potato fries. Oh my gosh. I love that combination of habanero pepper and sweet ketchup with sweet potatoes. I mean, really, really good. Fried, sweet potato fries. So that is my ketchup recipe. It really, if you use kombucha, it will ferment faster, and it only takes maybe 2 weeks. If you're not using kombucha, if you're counting on lactobacillus just to colonize it, you're going to want more salt. You have to have enough salt in there, and be careful not letting air in, and it will probably take a month. So anyway, delicious, delicious stuff. And, speaking of fermentation, speaking of old recipes, it's something I really get into. There is, I guess it's the oldest cookbook in the Western world. I don't know, these days it goes under the title of, Roman cookery, the art of Roman cookery, I don't know. I guess the guy's name was Apicius. It's Apicius. Wrote the first cookbook. Now, when I was in school, they told us his name was Apicius. You're missing a syllable, I don't know. But then again, the very brief bit of learning I had about this guy was that Romans ate weird stuff. They told us they ate fish sauce and mice. Okay. It's not really true. Okay, Roman fish sauce is very much like our Worcestershire sauce, just a little, or Thai food fish sauce. Many of the Asian sauces, all they did was they took the anchovies when they caught them, and they salted them to preserve them. Over time, the anchovies kind of dehydrated and broke down, and the liquid that was essentially a fermentation of fish and salt became garum. Garum is a salty fish sauce, and it's not that weird, honestly. I mean, if you like oyster liquor, the juice that comes out of oysters, very similar, just a little bit. They're both salty and they're both slightly seafoody, and it adds that background flavor, just the same as the Worcestershire sauce does, just the same as like a mushroom ketchup. Really good, actually. And as far as eating mice, it's sort of like I guess something lost in translation. They had a critter called a dormouse. Dormouse is actually more like a type of squirrel. I eat squirrel. Squirrel's good meat. It's not weird, but that's the way it was taught to me, which was like, people in the ancient world ate all kinds of weird stuff. Well, yeah, not really. Actually, Apicius's book, if that's how you pronounce his name, I have absolutely no idea, is fantastic. The recipes are very, very good. You will find the first recipes for frittatas and roasted fowl. I mean, like we have chicken, well, they had peacocks. And oh, it's so weird, the Romans ate peacocks. Well, no. The chicken actually comes from India, so they would have raised peacocks and ducks and geese to eat, whereas we are usually more comfortable eating chickens and turkeys and such. Turkey is not a European animal; it's an animal that comes from South America originally. I can go on and on about it. It's really good recipes, excellent desserts. The ancient Romans were an empire. I mean, they had the spice trade. They were getting pepper and all kinds of spices from China through Turkey. They put pepper in everything, actually, both savory and sweet dishes, believe it or not. Pepper was just very popular. Saffron. They used a lot of saffron, a lot of bay leaves, a lot of cinnamon. Cinnamon, which was coming from half a world away. They used a ton of honey and, of course, a ton of wine and vinegar. And that's what makes this interesting to an herbalist is that well, first of all, Apicius's cookbook, I guess is how you, okay, I'm going to quit saying that because I honestly don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. One of my best friends, one of my dearest friends, is Italian. She lives in Rome. Her last name is Brunelli. You may remember that if you're into food because her family used to own, her family still owns, her family rightfully owns one of the largest pecorino cheese companies in the world. And she loves food as much as I do. I'm going to have to ask her because, interestingly, in Italian high school, apparently you get to choose your electives like you only get to do in college here in America. And she had, I think, 4 years of Greek and 3 years of Latin. And, meanwhile, I was sitting through math classes that made absolutely, tell me in life, really, seriously, how many of us use geometry on a regular basis? Yeah, I don't. And I actually do carpentry and stuff. I actually like measure and cut things. And anyway, I'm getting off on another tangent. Math and science is actually really important, but far more important than most of what's taught in school these days is learning the classics, is learning Greek and Roman literature and the Bible, and learning to actually think, putting things in context, using logic. And so, she learned things in school that were a whole lot more useful than I learned in school. I can tell you that much. But anyway, the Roman recipes, ancient Rome, very interesting, very good. Everything I've tried out of this book so far is very good. And maybe a little too much honey in some. I mean, they like what they call the agrodolce, the mix of sour and sweet. If you like sweet and sour sauce in a Chinese restaurant, boy, you'd love ancient Roman cooking because they put honey and vinegar into most every sauce. They used a ton of pine nuts. Pine nuts don't grow here, so that's a little difficult for me. I have to substitute other nuts. But for the most part, I've really enjoyed working through this book. But for an herbalist perspective, it's great because it's also an herbal. It also has a whole chapter on herbal medicine. Fantastic, right? Well, we've also talked before about herbed wines. Basically, I've read this in so many books. It's one of those things people repeat until they think it's true, and everybody thinks it's true. They say the ancients used to put herbs in their wines because their wines were turning. It would preserve the wine. It would keep it longer. Well, it may have been true, but like in this book by this guy 2,000 years ago in Rome, he was actually recommending for like fine banquets and stuff. I mean, this just tells you how wealthy the ancient Roman Empire was. wines that have been aged for 100 years. Okay, I tell you what, go to a restaurant tomorrow, go to the finest restaurant in your town, and ask them for 100-year-old Chateau Lafite. You're not going to get it. They don't have it. If they had it, it would cost you probably more than your car. Uh, I, the Rothschild wines, whatever you think about them as a family and their political and religious associations, they make some phenomenal wines. When I was in college, there was a store that was closing down, and they were selling expensive wines for like 10% of their value or less. And I got a case of Chateau Lafite. I mean, I stuck it back. I used to. This was very good wine, and it was only maybe 10 years old, and probably not the best vintage. Imagine going in now and sitting down and saying, I want 100-year-old Chateau Lafite. You're not going to get it, okay? I mean, if you're Elon Musk or something, maybe you can source a bottle. So, but in ancient Rome at the time, uh, yeah, they were using very, very fine wines. And they usually spiced or herbed their wines. And this is what's really interesting. I mean, we think about like Dioscorides, Pliny the Elder, Theophrastus, all those herbal preparations, all the way up through St. Hildegard von Bingen, were usually medicinal herbs put in wine, not tinctures. They didn't really have stills. Distillation was invented by the Arabs. You know, these tea was, yeah, they'd make a tea. But for the most part, medicinal herbs, were given in wine. But even just at a dinner party or even just having supper, when you had your wine, it would have been herbed as a luxury. This was a wealthy empire, and they could afford to have the best. So they had a nice dry white wine, and they put honey in it. This is a recipe, a spice wine from Apicius. White wine. I guess this is, just to say a bottle, right? Honey, probably about a cup. Ground black pepper. A pinch of saffron. One crushed bay leaf or spikenard. Probably a little less than a teaspoon of cinnamon or mastic. 2 dates. And that was mixed together with 3.5 cups of white wine. There you go. 3.5 quarts. I'm sorry, 3.5 quarts of white wine. That medicinally, very good for you. It's going to help your digestion. It's going to help with joint pain. It's going to help with your blood sugar. I mean, I could go on down the list. This would be good for colds and fevers. But it made a nice wine to drink. And they literally had the finest wines. This is something we probably ought to get back into. He gives various recipes. A spiced honey wine for a journey. Now, this is, you might be exposed to a lot of hot temperatures and sunshine. A similar spiced wine with pepper and honey and such as that would actually help keep the wine. You keep wine in a cool cellar to keep it from turning. Well, in his book, he gives, obviously, the first recipe recorded for Roman absinthe, a wine herbed with wormwood. This is one of the foundational medicines of Western herbalism. I mean, and cocktails. Where would we be without vermouth, right? Well, vermouth is Old German for wormwood wine. For his Absinthium Romanum, I guess. It's a spice wine with wormwood, spikenard, or what do you say? Spikenard or mastic. Mastic is similar to cinnamon, and cosmary, and a pinch of saffron. 3 scruples of saffron, and I'm not exactly sure what a scruple amounts to, but it was made for a bitter wine. And cosmary is tanacetum, balsamita. It's very aromatic, So this would have been medicinal as well as a table wine and a way to stimulate the appetite and a way to settle the stomach and aid digestion. He has a recipe for a rose infused wine. Actually, this is Rosatum et Violacium. There we go, Violacium. Rose and violet wine. How great is that for an herbalist? I mean, think about that. This is going to bring down inflammation. This is going to help with fever. This is going to help with pain. And this is just a wine infused with roses and violets for 7 days. He had one that was actually just rose wine without the violets. Another one. Well, anyway, he has infused oils that we would use at the table, and medicinally infused vinegars. How to make those interesting sweet and sour Roman sauces. But again, the book also has herbal remedies in it. Like most cookbooks until about 1900, you would have recipes for food, and you'd have recipes for home medicine, for cures. It's an excellent reason to collect old cookbooks and remember, I mean, what Hippocrates said: let food be your medicine, and let medicine be your food. And I think, really going back to the old cookbooks and going back to pre-industrialized food, and how much further can you go back than like 2,000 years, right? But if we do that, we really can do that. Our food can be our medicine. Absolutely. Anyway, so now let's get into rhodiola. Oh, let me get comfortable in my chair here. All right. So rhodiola is, it's not an herb that there's a lot of history documented, not a lot of documentation throughout history. It's known as rose root or stone crop. In the older herbals, that's what you're going to see it as, is rose root or stone crop. Actually has been used for at least 3,000 years. So, I mean, that's what's so odd, is there isn't much written about it. Most of its use seems to have been in Russia and Scandinavia. Very cold weather areas, especially in Russia, it was utilized in Siberia. So we're talking, not a warm climate, okay? But, if you know rose root, if you know stone crop, they're sedums. They grow just about everywhere. And I don't know if they're interchangeable. I don't know. I mean, I know rhodiola is specifically sold as an herb, but there's so many varieties, and have they been tested? I have no idea. It would be really interesting to see if there's like a tribe of people in, South America or Mexico that have a specific sedum or rose root or whatever, rhodiola, to their area that they actually used and document in their herbal medicine. Or is this one that was really just kind of discovered by the ancient Cossacks or something? I mean, we're talking Siberia. I mean, and of course there was historically a lot of trade between Russia and Scandinavia, by the way. So I don't know. Maybe the herb was discovered in Scandinavia. Maybe it was taken to Russia. Maybe it was discovered in Russia and taken to Scandinavia. Who knows? But it's important to point out that we do find sedums, several sedums, mentioned in English and German herbals, and even going back to Dioscorides, to ancient Greece. We find a mention of rhodiola, and this was rhodiola or rhodia. How do you pronounce it? Rhodia, not rhodiola, but rhodia radix. Now this is related, but his use for it is very different than what we find about rhodiola or stone crop. He said Rhodia radix grows in Macedonia, similar to costus but lighter and uneven, making a scent bruised similar to roses. That's one of the reasons it's called rose root. It also can have a reddish tinge to it. It is useful for those aggrieved with headaches, bruised and applied with a little rosaceum, that's oil of rose, and applied to the forehead and the temples. It's also called Rhodiola. Anyway, they saw it as a headache remedy. That's as far as they got it. Um, the fact that the Greeks were getting it from Macedonia probably leads us to believe that the Balkan knowledge of the herb um, came probably from the Russian origins. So I'm really thinking that the history of this herb probably does originate in Siberia. Or it could have been one that, gypsies that took around to different areas and introduced people to. There should be far more research on gypsy herbalism. Gypsies traveled more around Europe and have their own very ancient tradition, but they learned everywhere they went about medicinal herbs, and that would be a treasure trove. That would be an absolute treasure trove if someone would really research the various European gypsy tribes. I mean, the travelers in Ireland are a little different, but I'm talking like Hungary and Romania and such as that. That would be quite an offering to humanity if someone would really get into that seriously. And a friend comes to mind who was actually. Would you believe I know a girl who is actually a gypsy queen? Yes, I actually do. We met through a permaculture course. We actually met in person once and didn't know each other. Years later, it was like, oh, that was you. I remember you. She's an artist. She actually, when she was a young girl, married a head of a gypsy tribe who was much older than she. And now she is like literally a queen. And I think I've talked with her about that. I believe she was Hungarian. Her heritage was Hungarian. And anyway, this is a tangent. We'll see about it. Hey, maybe it'll pan out, maybe it won't. If someone else wants to do it, tell me, and I will promote your books. I'll tell people about your work. I think that would be fascinating. Anyway, Wikipedia, speaking of this herb, tells us that Rhodiola rosea has been used in Russia and Scandinavia for centuries to help people cope with cold Siberian climates and a stressful life. It is also used to increase physical endurance and resistance to high altitude sickness. But scientific evidence for such benefits have not been proven. The plant has been used in traditional Chinese medicine, where it is called Hong Jin Yang. That's my best shot at that. Hong Jin Yang. Anyway, yeah, so interestingly, there has been, you got to remember, northeastern Russia we're talking like from the area like Russia to Kazakhstan out there, not too far from China. And so perhaps the herb actually originated in China and came to Siberia and from there to Scandinavia. Who knows? But what's interesting about this statement in Wikipedia, and the reason I included it, Wikipedia hates herbal medicine. Wikipedia hates all alternative natural medicine. They basically say anything that isn't, allelopathic, whatever. Anything that isn't Western medicine is superstition. Well, even they are admitting essentially that this is an adaptogen. Rhodiola or rose root is an adaptogen, just like ginseng, just like spikenard, just like, all these plants. And I include it in my show on adaptogens, so you may have heard a little bit of this before, but I think Rhodiola is unique. While we can only speculate about its history, and honestly, I think that maybe from China to Russia, Russia to Scandinavia, from there into Macedonia, and probably spread throughout Europe by gypsies, who knows? That's probably very likely, very likely. but it has only become popular in herbal medicine recently. Plants for a Future says, though little known as a medicinal plant, rose root has been used in traditional European medicine for over 3,000 years, once again, mainly as a tonic. Tonic meaning an adaptogen. It gives you strength, it helps you recover, it makes you, gives you a little more endurance. Modern research has shown that it increases the body's resistance to any type of stress by regulating the body's hormonal response. Its use has been shown to have a protective effect upon neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine in the brain. It improves neurotransmitter activity by inhibiting their enzymatic destruction and preventing their decline caused by excessive stress hormone release. Roseroot also enhances the transport of serotonin's precursors in the brain, and studies have shown that the herb can increase serotonin by up to 30%. Now, how important is that? All the antidepressant drugs that people are on, most of them, all they do is increase serotonin. If this herb, Rhodiola, can increase serotonin naturally, could be a very good use against depression and anxiety with far fewer side effects than pharmaceuticals. That could be huge. That could be really huge in our society today. It goes on to say it has an enhancing effect upon physical endurance and sexual potency. This is an herb that also helps in the bedroom. A decoction of the flowers has been used to treat stomach aches, intestinal discomfort. The raw flowers have been eaten as a treatment for tuberculosis. What does that mean? Well, maybe it's lung supportive. Obviously, it probably is. Maybe it has some antiviral properties. This is one we really, really need to look more into. Even, in the 90s, Michael Moore said it was an underrated adaptogen. I think this could be, I'm not going to say the next big thing as far as herbs, because it was a little popular a few years ago, kind of faded back. But when you're looking at an herb that's going to help athletic performance, help you in the bedroom, help your immunity, lower stress, help with depression, anxiety, exhaustion. You know what? If you can start cultivating this herb, frankly, it could be a botanical gold mine. So, like I mentioned, Michael Moore, my class notes from the Southwestern School of Botanical Medicine said it was specifically good for adrenal exhaustion. He said this is exhaustion due to adrenals, lessens adrenergic stress, lessens exhaustion, good for muscle tone, slightly stimulates the thyroid, improves lipid metabolism in the liver. It's also a good liver herb. Betters the efficiency of the central nervous system and muscles. It causes the body to actually produce fewer waste products. It's one of the reasons it's good for athletes. When you exercise, you're building up lactic acid and your muscles get sore and tired. This actually reduces that lactic acid. I mean, for a marathon runner, this could be huge. He said it helps you get more energy from the same amount of calories. Again, for anyone working in a stressful job, this could be huge. It helps with blood sugar. It's a mood elevator. It helps with depression. May help with bladder cancer. It is slightly hypertensive, meaning it increases blood sugars. It increases blood pressure just a little bit. It is a mild stimulant, kind of like coffee, in the words of Michael Moore. Root is usually used, but all parts of the plant are strongly anti-inflammatory. And Michael Moore speculated that all sedums could be used in this way, not just rose root or rhodiola. That is very interesting. We have at least 3 wild sedums here in North Carolina that I want to begin experimenting with. He said further it would lessen metabolic stress, and he included it with some Siberian ginseng, Aurelia, regular ginseng, etc. But anyway, physician's desk reference for herbal medicine doesn't even list rhodiola. So I mean, while it is known, it is still fairly new to Western herbalism. We'll just put it that way. And let's see, the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. It's a big organization. They didn't tell a lot about it, but they said rhodiola grows in cold regions at high elevations in Europe and Asia. Well, yeah, some of the sedums grow at lower elevations. We're just going to have to experiment with this. They said it had a long history in Russia and Scandinavia. We know that. Was used to increase endurance, work performance, tolerance of high altitude, to treat fatigue, weakness, and other symptoms. Today, rhodiola is promoted to increase energy, stamina, strength, and mental capacity, improve athletic performance, resist the effects of stress, to help manage depression, anxiety, and other symptoms. And this is a current article. It says few rigorous studies of this herb have been done in people. And there isn't enough evidence from studies in people to allow conclusions to be reached about rhodiola as helpful for any health-related use. So even now, rhodiola is so little known. This is one we really got to look into. And, there's a book out there called The Lost Book of Herbal Remedies, and as I've said, it's the most ridiculous title because none of this information's lost. If they thought it was, all they had to do was ask me. But, like I'm that famous, right? But it is a very good book, okay? They don't always cite their sources. I have issues with them, but it is good. They said medicinal use, rhodiola root is a powerful adaptogen. It is good for lifting the mood, increasing mental concentration. It regulates the body's reaction to stress and normalizes hormones. Rhodiola's effects are often best at lower doses. It is important to start with a lower dose and increase only if needed. And they go on about it. But I'm basically just repeating the same information over and over. Basically, it's a really good adaptogen. And I guess I'm going to give you the caveat of don't believe a lot of what you read online, because either you're going to read very vague medicinal information. I think I've just curated the best of it for you. Or you're going to hear about how rhodiola was, this magical herb that fueled the Vikings' pillaging and raping and conquest of Europe, which probably isn't true either. So it's definitely worth looking into, and we really need to find out if some of the sedums are interchangeable. So y'all, that's about it for this one. Have a great week. Go cook some good old-fashioned food. From an old cookbook, if you need a cookbook, and I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.